Hi, everybody. Welcome to this session, which is entitled A Consortium Approach to Library Publishing via Open Journal Systems and the Texas Digital Library. My name is Kristi Park. I am the Executive Director of the Texas Digital Library, and I'm joined by a couple of our members, Alexa Hight, the Scholarly Communications Librarian at Texas A&M Corpus Christi and the Chair of our OJS User Group, and also Dr. Bruce Herbert, the Director of the Office of Scholarly Communications at A&M Libraries in College Station. And the three of us are here today speaking on behalf of the entire TDL OJS User Group. I'm going to start with a little background about TDL and our use of OJS to host open access journals. We are a collaborative regional membership consortium. We're based in Texas, rooted in higher ed. And we have currently 25 members who fund us and direct our efforts. That group of members includes academic research libraries primarily, but also community college libraries and publics. And this year, our first member outside of Texas in Arizona State Libraries. And our mission collectively is to build capacity among those member institutions for radically broadening access to digital content that's of value to the academy and to maintainers of cultural heritage collections. So we provide a number of hosted services to do that. They're listed here on this slide and include, of course, open access academic journal hosting, which is the one we're going to focus on here today. As a consortium, we highly value and rely on collaboration, and that ethos of collaboration is the basis of our service for journal hosting and all of our other services as well. And it's a model we believe uses shared resources well and efficiently, and also allows all of us to provide this service in a more robust way than we would each be able to do on our own. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do that with OJS. A few basics to start out with. So we started hosting journals at TDL around 2009. We've always used OJS, and we're currently running OJS 3.2. Our member institutions fully fund this service through their membership fees, and as a result, no hosting costs are passed on to the individual journal teams. We do require that all of our journals have open access policies. Right now, we have 75 individual journal titles that we're hosting, and those are supported by 13 sponsoring institutions. You can see the breakdown by institution here in this chart. You can see we have, large flagship universities that have ARL libraries like Texas A&M, which has 27 journals that they're sponsoring. But we also have smaller and less well-resourced institutions within systems or that operate independently within this group as well. How do we host and provide sufficient support for all these journals across so many different institutions and types of institutions? And how do we do this, especially given that TDL is not a particularly large organization in and of itself? We have 8 full-time staff, and we support this service with less than 1 full-time equivalent. Out of necessity in some ways, the approach we take is highly collaborative and involves many layers of support and lots of flexibility. And that allows any of our institutions that wants to craft their own localized journal support services for their constituents at their universities. So here in this diagram, you see one of our journals, the Texas Water Journal, and the 3 stakeholder groups that are working together to support its success. We have the TDL staff, which provides hosting and system support, along with direct help desk support to end users of this journal. We have the member library there in the middle, which provides an important layer of support, serving as liaisons between TDL and the editorial and journal management teams, and providing additional publishing support services at their discretion. And importantly, crucially, we have the journal's editorial and management team, the hands-on folks who manage the day-to-day tasks of running the journal, managing its content, policy, and workflows. All three of these groups have to be working well and working together to make a journal successful. So I'm going to drill down on the next slide just a little bit into these three different roles. On the left, you have TDL, which in addition to providing the hosting and help desk support that I mentioned, also provides financial support to PKP to enable continued development of the OJS platform. We also coordinate a data site DOI consortium, which members can join, and through that they can provide DOI minting services for their journals. And we provide overall coordination of the service across these groups and coordination of the TDL OJS User Group and Faculty OJS Group that Alexa will talk about a little bit more later in the presentation. On the right, of course, you have those editorial and journal management teams that are setting journal policy and staffing the journal, managing the editorial workflow, planning for the sustainability of the journal, and handling journal registration and indexing tasks like registering the journal with the Directory of Open Access Journals or getting an ISSN. All of that stuff is the responsibility of the editorial and journal management team. The member library, as I mentioned, provides this crucial and flexible middle layer, which at minimum means they serve as a service contact for TDL and they liaise with the journal teams on behalf of TDL. But there's a broad range of other services that they can and sometimes do provide. And it's up to them to decide how to do that and whether they have the capacity to. So that could include any number of things. We have one library where the librarian serves as the de facto managing editor for each of the journals that they sponsor. We have other members that use their ORCID memberships or DOI services to enable journals to get these identifiers and use them effectively. We have an institution doing select retrospective digitization projects with journals to get legacy print content into an online platform. And we have another institution that is really working closely with outside professional organizations that are providing another set of publishing support services for the journal. So the main message here is there's a lot of flexibility in this model that can work with different institutions who may have different amounts of capacity to provide those kind of value-added services. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alexa to talk more about the OJS User Group and some of the work that they're doing to support the service.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristi. Yes, my name is Alexa Hight. I am the current chair of the TDL OJS User Group. In 2019, we created the TDL OJS User Group. And as Kristi mentioned, the group itself are made up of librarians and library staff at the TDL member institutions. We primarily work together by facilitating mutual support among library managers of the OJS service. For example, when the group was created, I was rather new to my position and on my campus and very new to OJS. And my campus, unfortunately, did not have policies for hosting journals. And so I was able to turn to my fellow TDL OJS members for their experience and expertise. After sitting down and creating our charter and mission with our organizational structure, with leadership and membership, we created some goals. And so our initial goals were to use monthly meetings to develop knowledge around OJS 3. Kristi and I met early on to create a content calendar with our discussion topics, and we sourced our speakers mostly from the OJS group itself. And I'll talk more about that on the next slide. Our second goal was to create 2 toolkits for journal managers. One on decision-making for prospective new journal managers, and one on what it takes to start a new journal and how to implement those things. Bruce and David at College Station really created this one toolkit that we have a screenshot of on the right. And we were able to kind of cover all of the topics that we wanted to put into those 2 different toolkits into one document, which has been great. So the next slide we talk a little bit more about our monthly meeting topics and how it works. So through our monthly meetings, we had either like how-to sessions and or kind of more broad discussions. Using our diverse expertise throughout our campuses and institutions, we were really able to divide and conquer. So for example, Laura Wah from Texas State did a deep dive on copyright licensing and ORCID for us. And so she went out and did her own research and created this wonderful presentation we have a screenshot of on the right. We did have some questions that she wasn't able to answer, and she really went above and beyond and brought in a guest speaker from ORCID to join our monthly meeting and talk with us. We also, a second example, we had a guest speaker from a UT Austin journal. A manager there came to discuss a use case, how they use their journal on their campus, and we just invited her to stay after her presentation to sit in on the rest of our conversation. And the library liaison at RGV, Justin White, had brought to the table this idea that we kind of create a similar support group or support system for editorial and journal management teams. So as Kristi mentioned, we are the library liaisons at our member institutions, and then we facilitate our journals with those editorial and journal management teams. And Dr. Trace from UT Austin pointed out that they often act in a silo. They are often looking at other journals as their competitors. And she really liked this idea of having various editors and journal managers have a support system, kind of like we do as the library liaisons. At the moment, this group is currently a listserv, but the OJS User Group is currently discussing how we can further support them. So my concluding thought before I turn it back over to Kristi is to say that our group really empowers not only each other in library liaisons on our campuses, but the various editorial and journal management teams on the campuses as well.
Thank you, Alexa. So that group has really done some amazing work in supporting each other and supporting TDL in providing this service. And I want to just wrap up by saying a little bit about why we think this works. And I'll start by saying it doesn't always work, right? It works well in a lot of cases. And then there are other journals where, for whatever reason, things don't work as well. And I think the crucial thing to remember there is that we have these three different constituent groups that are supporting a journal, a three-legged stool, if you will. And if one of those legs isn't able to hold up their part, then things don't go as well. And so we do find with some journal teams, they just aren't as prepared to actually learn the technology and learn the application to do what they need to do, and need a lot more handholding. In those cases, things can struggle a little bit. But overall, it does work. And I think the reason it does, from our perspective, is that it's a Goldilocks solution. It's just the right size. So our consortium and the service, 75 journals, 13 institutions, is big enough that we can gain efficiencies at scale through these shared services, both shared IT services, shared staff services, and shared library liaison services, as Alexa talked about, with sharing the work of learning and support across all these institutions. But it's also small enough to facilitate community and personal connection. Once things get too big, it's hard to feel like you know the other people in the community and can really rely on them and work with them. And so in the case of TDL, this sort of regional model, regional consortial model, really is the right size to provide this kind of collaborative approach. And with that, we'll move on to our last slide and just say thank you to all of our TDL OJS User Group members who supported the development of this presentation and support the ongoing provision of the OJS hosting service. They are listed here. And thank all of you for attending this session. We welcome any and all questions and thoughts about this model and would be interested in discussing with anyone out there who's interested themselves in possibly replicating this model elsewhere. We look forward to discussing this with you and taking your questions later on. Thanks.